the past president presenting his presentation on testing the hypothesis, throwing petrol at a candle. For those of you that don't know Michael, he's been with the fire service for 32 years. He's been with the Fire Investigation Research Unit since 2017. So he's been a fire investigator for 14 years, and he's done over 800. What is it?
2007.
2007, sorry. And he's been a fire investigator for 14 years, and he has investigated over only 800 fire scenes. Only 800 only. And
Junior,
yeah. So he's been around for a while. So this should be an interesting presentation. I'll hand it over to you, Michael.
Great. Thanks, Mark. And welcome, everyone. As I said, Michael Forbes. I'm with the Fire Investigation and Research Unit with Fire Rescue New South Wales. So, yeah, I was doing fire investigation for about 14 years. I moved over now. I'm currently doing the team leader fire research position, which essentially runs our Londonderry facility. And this case, we're out at Londonderry to conduct the testing out at Londonderry. So I manage that site now as well. So I'd like to sort of get into it I'd like to just provide some background to how I got to this and the presentation that this sort of originally developed was Woman on Fire. Now, I know that I've given this presentation quite a few times. I know it's a favourite amongst New South Wales Police, if there's any New South Wales Police out there. I know they love this presentation. But essentially it was about a lady that was essentially walking down a driveway totally involved in fire. Back in 2013, the incident occurred. I was approached in 2015 to conduct a coronial inquest. When I looked at the brief evidence, I sort of said, well, the only way to do this is actually if we set someone on fire. So we got out to Londonderry and actually hired a stunt woman, and there's a photo of her on fire. So we set her on fire 4 times. This is for a coronial inquest, trying to work out what happened. And then I was able to form an opinion, provided that opinion to the court, and then off to court, I go to the coroner's court. I gave my evidence. Essentially after that, the coroner shut it down. They handed the brief to the Director of Public Prosecutions. I wasn't aware of this. They recommended murder charge. The prosecution's EPP sat on it for 2 years. Then they finally charged the husband with murder. So then 2 years after that, so now 4 years after I've done the inquest, off we go to a murder trial. And a week before the murder trial started, the prosecutor invited me into his office and said, Michael, all that testing you did is fantastic, but we're not going to use it. And I was like flabbergasted. I was like, why? He said, essentially, it's too prejudicial to the accused. So we don't want to risk getting a guilty verdict and then getting it lost on appeal. So we're going to get the evidence out of you using your knowledge, training, experience. We can't mention this. And I was just like, well, that's how I got my opinion, was actually doing this testing. But no, they said, no, we'll get around it. So the first trial was a hung jury. And then in the second trial, it was an acquittal. So he was found not guilty. And from that lesson I learnt was that you need to get the DPP involved early before you do the testing so that they have carriage of it and they own the schedule, the testing schedule, so that you don't get to a point where you're at a trial going to court and then the prosecutors say, no, we can't use that because of X, Y, Z. So that's what I learned from that lesson, and I brought this into this case. The other case that I have also sort of talked about many times is fire created from water. Now, this didn't go to court, but certainly this was a case where we were able to recreate the incident and test hypotheses and got it exactly. And this was where an aqua lens was created from rain on a pallet of Y splitters for air conditioners in the roof of your ceiling. And Nick Sudarov, who works now for Halliwell, he come up with a theory, the hypothesis. We went out to Londonderry. We got those exact same crates. We put some water in these, wrapped in plastic, clear plastic. And then, within 10 minutes, we could see that it created an aqua lens which focused the sun's rays onto cardboard. And then, a few hours later, the things were on fire, and which matched exactly to what was captured on CCTV. So testing hypotheses is something that we do as part of the scientific method. Most of the time we try and do it in our heads using inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning based on our knowledge and what experience we have. But the ultimate test is obviously recreating or demonstrating what is possible and what is not possible by actually, trying to use whatever was found at the scene or circumstances around the scene to be able to say, okay, if I, build a fire or the fire is created, what's actually possible. So with that background in mind, today's presentation is about a case in South Australia. So we'll talk about the incident and then look at some photos from the crime scene. And a lit candle was involved. So we'll go into the science of all that, as well as actually how the DPP came to request it. The South Australian Police detectives and crime scene that attended the scene actually came to Londonderry in New South Wales to conduct the demonstrations. And from those demonstrations, I then formed an opinion, and then we went to court. I gave my evidence over 3.5 days. And then after that, the defence decided to get their expert. Their expert came back, 6 months later to testify in court. So I went down there to assist the DPP. Then we'll look at the judgment and obviously the lessons learned. So as we go through this, I'm more than happy to answer questions. Just keep your on mute, your mics, and then if you do have questions, I'm happy to actually answer the questions as we go along. So certainly, if you want to actually ask that question, please raise your hand. There's already a question there. Is the Department of Public Prosecutions, is it who are the DPP? Oh, sorry, Department of Public Prosecutions. There you go. So Grant, that's it. Beautiful. Okay, so let's look at the incident. So in 2021 in South Australia, Woodville West, a fire occurred at Calendar Place. Now, there were 4 people in the house. There were 2 males and 2 females. They were all consuming meth. So, not really off to a great start, but this is what happens. The power went out the premises, around 11 o'clock the night before. And so a number of candles were lit around the house to obviously provide some light. It was at this time that 2 males got into an argument. One of the males, which ended up being the defendant, then produced an open cut 2-litre plastic bottle. So it's like a solo bottle, and he cut the top off it, and he had 2-stroke petrol in it. The defendant then walked into the office where the other male was located, who ended up being the deceased. He stood up while he was holding a lit candle. A fire then occurred on the deceased in the office area, and he was then ran out of the house. A garden hose was used to try and extinguish him. Fire service then arrived to put more water on him. The defendant then took off, drove a car, spoke to a couple of people, and then he made his way into New South Wales. It was a police pursuit. He had an accident, and he was actually injured pretty bad. The deceased went to hospital, sustained 80% full-thickness burns, and he died 2 days later. The 2 females in the time of the house were observed what happened. They just obtained some minor burns. The defendant was charged with murder and 2 counts of aggravated creating likelihood of serious harm. And then he was extradited from New South Wales back into South Australia. I was down in Adelaide a few years ago, around just after this happened, and I was giving my Woman on Fire presentation to the fire investigators down there, and some of the police actually were in the room at the same time. One of those police officers then approached me after that presentation. It was the crime scene officer that actually attended the scene, and he said, we might have a similar incident. Do you mind if you have a look at this case? So when they did, they approached me. I looked at the brief, and they said, is there anything we can do to try and answer some questions that around ignition and with a lit candle. So the initial questions were around, how does fire react when two-stroke is thrown at one person, by one person to a second person who's holding a candle? What would occur if the fuel was tipped on self, so holding the candle and tipping it on top of yourself as well? And whether the circumstances we have in our case, would the vapour have ignited? Was it likely that the fire would have started if wax was thrown onto a naked flame? There was a number of wax you could see around the crime scene, which I'll show you in a minute. And they wanted to know whether hot wax or melted wax could ignite the vapours as well. This was the initial request from the police before the DPP sort of got involved. I then informed them and the DPP that what would be involved if we did some demonstrations at our Londonderry facility. So they then came back with an updated request, which essentially was these things. Firstly, they wanted to throw two-stroke petrol from different distances to a person or a jig or some type of rig that was holding a lit candle. The lit candle, naked flame being exposed to an open container. So essentially, how far away can we actually have a container with petrol in it and a lit candle? Like, how close is it possible for the vapours to actually be ignited? Varying distances as well. Pouring off two-stroke petrol on someone's self involved with obviously holding a lit candle. That was another scenario that they wanted us to test. Wax being thrown. So again, melted wax, throw that at a candle, throw that at petrol or two-stroke petrol. Would that ignite it? Fuel being poured on a person dummy and then lit by a second person. So if you were to pour petrol or throw petrol on someone and then light someone using a lighter, what would that look like? And then certainly fuel set alight in the container, so igniting the container full of petrol and then throwing that from distance at a target. What does that look like in terms of on the victim as well as around the scene as well? So the crime scene was drawn up as follows, and you can sort of see that there's sort of a house with 3 bedrooms, but the main area here is around the office and lounge area, which is you're about to see. So if you look at sort of this area here, this is the main office area, which is the where the altercation occurred. The lounge room is here, and there's a nib wall which becomes relevant later. And then the main fire in the entire house was in this area here. But there was other bunch of small fires up against this bookcase on the area here on the desk, and the container was found sort of in this area, which you'll see in a minute. So this is a photo shortly after the incident when crime scene first arrived. So you can see this is the lounge room looking towards the office. So yeah, the office being over here, there's that nib wall. You can see the lounge has been affected. The main sort of area of fire damage is certainly in the corner. You can see the markers there, 3 and 2, and there's a chair there as well. Moving into closer, you can see again quite a significant burn up against the wall. Again, this nib wall, which will come relevant later. But you can see that if you're looking at other areas in the office area, the fire isn't as large or intense as this area here. This is certainly where the main fire is in the house. Again, the office area, you can see this wispy black soot smoke up against the desk, a chair. Again, the nib wall's got a significant pattern on it. And then we move into the office. So you can see the desk, marker 4, marker 1, and this area here. That's where the candle was found, or a candle was found. You can see other candles around the scene as well, meth pipe. Again, the wispy areas of soot, which will become relevant later, but certainly a nice little pattern on the desk and some protection marks there as well. Looking back at the bookcase from the office, you can see the chair, this nib wall here, which is very highly debated between the defence and myself, experts. But again, the wispy smoke area, which we'll go into soon, how these are created, they can be seen all over this bookcase. And this is where, again, how I describe this was highly debated or questioned by the defence, and we'll talk about that in a sec. Yeah, close-up of these desks. Again, wispy smoke, soot, slightly damaged by heat, a little bit of bubbling of the paint, but, not burning through of the laminate there. More wispy soot, and again here, very dominant, very prominent as well. Little bits of soot, not huge fire, but significant enough. Looking from the office back towards the lounge, it's this area of the nib wall, and you can see there's sort of two distinct burns. You can see like a V pattern of burning through the paint and almost the paper of the plasterboard, but then a protection area underneath, or where it's just got soot. So you can see significant fires occurred in this area here, which has impacted on a V pattern pointing back with its base right there. But there's also sort of soot and wispy areas around the corner of the nib. And again, this is which was talked about in evidence. Now, when fireys arrived, they've sort of found it in this area, or this, the container was found sort of fallen over and squashed. This is the 2-litre solo container. And you can see by this container, it's still relatively intact, but it has obviously been affected by heat. And again, this was debated between the experts, whether this actually had caught fire or had it actually just been sort of melted due to radiant heat. And I'll go into what my opinion is shortly. Outside, if you remember that sketch, there was an area outside. So this is like his workbench, work area. We've got a fuel container, but we've also got the lid, the top part, which has been obviously specifically cut to accommodate pouring of 2-stroke petrol into that 2-litre container. So the site was excavated by crime scene of South Australian Police, and they've removed firstly the lounge, and you can see the intensity in this corner of the lounge is obviously the greatest part to greatest fire damage in the whole house. Above it on the ceiling, you can see a clean burn where the plasterboard and the paint is sort of burnt through, which certainly indicates sort of a higher intensity. But there was items here. It must have been a plant or a desk or some of the kind, and the lounge itself explains why this area and there was sort of is burnt so much, because essentially the fuel load here was the greatest area where of burning, and that's hence why the fire continued to burn in this area, and hence why, or in my opinion, that's why we see such a significant pattern sort of in this area of the lounge. So again, you can see the debris in this area is still sort of the pre-excavation. So there is, quite a bit of combustible materials here that are burnt, and then what they then do is then excavate it. So you can see there was something that was here that was protecting the floor. And again, as we go around the corner, there's areas of protection as well that has just hasn't burnt all the way or charred the floor, such as the charring to the floor observed in these areas here, which I, again, have opinion on that. So this photo, again, shows like before, if we see pre-excavation, if we go back, say this photo here, you can see that something has been burning here, such as a blanket or pillow or something. But once the excavation has occurred, we look at, there's just no charring through that material, whatever it is, to the floor compared to over the back here. And again, this is debated in court afterwards. And again, you can see the close-up here of this nib wall. Essentially, there's a V pattern pointing back to this area, but there's also soot underneath that V pattern that hasn't burnt through and essentially is just fire burning on the ground, and the smoke, the wispy areas of soot smoke impacting on the nib wall on this side as well as around this side. So that's where my opinion is explained in a minute. These are the candles that were found by a crime scene. We don't know exactly which one was used or being held by the deceased. It was hypothesised, and police again provided this information to me that this was the candle that was held by the deceased. So on the night, the crime scene officer only took 3 samples, which was a little bit frustrating, especially when I was giving evidence. Number 1 was the container, and then that came back positive for 2-stroke petrol and oil as part of the sample. Marker 4 was on the desk. Now, on the desk there was a like a tissue of some kind, so he sampled that, and that came back positive for petrol as well. At marker 2, he took a sample. Now, that was obviously where this nib wall is, and I can't recall if it was the actual blanket or a pad. Yeah, I wasn't quite sure, but that sample came back negative from the lab, and we'll explain how defence explained that a little bit later. So first, when I put my statement together, I wanted to explain to the court as well as the DPP the science of a candle. Candle is, I guess, the most simplest form of a fire. And when you look at the candle, it explains everything in the fire triangle. Essentially, liquids and solids don't burn. It's the gaseous phase that burns. And the cycle of the heat impacting on the wax then vaporizing, providing the gas, and then ignition of that gas is what you see in the candle. And if you look at the candle, you can see that there's no burning between the melted wax and the flame. That's because it's too rich. The blue flame is where better combustion occurs, almost complete combustion, a clean sort of burning area. But the yellow and the white part of the flame is I guess, the less complete combustion. So you're getting inefficient burning, and that's why you see the yellow and white areas of the flame. And those temperatures also represent different temperatures. Those colours of the flame represent different temperatures, with those blue zones and white zones higher temperatures than the sort of the orange and the yellow. But it ranges from 600 degrees to 1400 degrees Celsius. So plenty of heat in a candle. So it's important to understand that, because when we start throwing petrol at it, you'll understand how sort of ignition occurs. Now, so yeah, looking at the crime scene again, this is where the candle was found. Now, according to most of the 2 girls, so essentially the defence provided no explanation when he was arrested, wasn't interviewed, and provided no assistance to police around what happened in the office. So they had to go by the witnesses. Essentially, they believe that the deceased was standing behind the desk, stood up, was in this area here or near the chair when the altercation occurred. And the accused was sort of standing sort of near number one over in this area here. And obviously when the fire occurred, the candle was dropped at some point. Obviously the container was dropped, which was found sort of in this location. And then he's proceeded outside on fire, and then a garden hose was applied for extinguishment and things like that. So over here, marker 4, you can see this is where the tissue was sampled, came back positive. There's also numerous sort of another lighter here, and there's some more up there. So ignition sources are everywhere, but the lit candle, we believe, was this one. There is the candle. So we had it analysed. It came back as a soy candle. When we started looking at demonstrations, we needed to get a lot of soy candles because we were going to plan on doing a lot of demonstrations to see what's possible and what's not possible. I use the word demonstration. I'll make sure that I do. So again, it's part of the last one, which was a woman on fire going to court with that. Essentially what we're doing here is we're not doing any research. We're not doing any testing per se, really. We're not recreating exactly what happened. All we are doing is conducting a demonstration of what's possible and what's not possible. You'll never get exact same conditions, exact same weather and temperature. What we're just trying to do is better understand the fire mechanism around an incident. And that's why it's a demonstration. It's not really testing. It's not scientific. It's just what's possible and what's not possible. So that's why I use that word demonstration. So one of the first things we wanted to see was, if we had a paraffin wax is more popular wax used in candles. So the soy wax, we just wanted to see what the different temperatures were. So as you can see there, it's a bit hard to see, but certainly 1,070 degrees using the thermocouple and paraffin wax. And on the right, it's about 1,017. So, it's about 1,011. So it's roughly about the same temperature, which is, again, we're not looking for specifics here. We're just trying to work out what temperatures can be raised, because when it comes to temperature, it's very important when it comes to ignition, because you want enough energy to be able to ignite the fuel. So let's talk about the fuel. And in this point, it is petrol and the two-stroke. When we look at petrol, it has a flash point of minus 43 degrees Celsius, but an auto ignition temperature of 257. So when we've got 1,000 degrees Celsius from a naked flame of a candle, there's more than enough energy to ignite the vapors of two-stroke. The oil in two-stroke, again, there's different ratios. We have 25-1 and 50-1. But, the flash point 130, auto ignition temperature, can't really find information on that. But certainly when mixed together, it's about the same. It doesn't affect its flash point too much or its auto ignition temperature as well. So moving to Londonderry, we decided to get everyone in. We're going to use 2 days. The aim of it, though, was to certainly observe the different ratios of two-stroke petrol introduced to an open flame, so from a candle, under different circumstances. So there was essentially 6 different tests or different series of tests or demonstrations that they wanted to do. They wanted to observe the different volumes of liquid in the container and thrown from different distances. What was to be able to see what happened. The first thing we wanted to know, though, was, okay, how much liquid is in that container? So we cut off the container at the same sort of height that was found from the crime scene. We measured it. That was 1.6 litres if it was full. So we used 3 different volumes. We didn't know how much volume was used on the night, so we decided to use 3 different volumes, being a quarter, a half, and 3/4. And this equated to 400 mil, 800 mil, and 1,200 mil. And if you look at the crime scene photos, you know that there is petrol, burning ignitable liquid, in different areas throughout that area. And that wispy smoke, and in my opinion, is burning ignitable liquid. So how much actual volume was used at the start, don't know exactly. So we're going to test 3 different volumes to see if the fire created matches or is similar to the observed fire patterns in that room. Now, obviously, you've got those burning areas, smaller areas, but the biggest fire is on the lounge room side. But that fire, I believe, was certainly created after the throw because there was combustible material in that corner. And so, therefore, it's a little bit misleading to say that the actual burning liquid created all of that fire. My opinion was that it created a small fire there, which was big initially. It would have died down, but it's ignited other combustible materials, which is then burnt into the corner, which is then burnt the edge of the lounge, which has provided that burning in that area. So that's how I believe. So again, the 3 levels of 400, 800, 1200, we're trying to see how big the fire is. So that's why we selected those 3 volumes. So moving into the different series, we used 6 series. So Series A, we had the 2-litre solo container cut in a similar manner. We wanted to test firstly the 2 different ratios, 50-1 and 25-1, and then test the different distances. Now, the distance would be, we decided to go with 4, so half a metre, metre and a half, and 2 metres from the candle, and throwing it at the candle to see firstly if ignition occurs and then how big the fire was after that. Series B would be test the pouring different volumes of 2-stroke onto the rig holding a lit candle. This is to simulate someone pouring on a silk. So this is essentially the 6 Series A to Series F that the DPP come up with. They wanted testing. I went back to them and said, okay, this is how we're going to do it. After that, Series C would be melting some wax of a soy candle, then pouring that into a 2-litre container with 2-stroke petrol. Now, I knew straight up that wouldn't occur because the melting temperature of wax is around 70 degrees Celsius. That is not hot enough to ignite the vapours of 2-stroke petrol, being need 257 degrees or above. So we knew that wouldn't occur, but we wanted to show that on video. Series D, pouring different volumes of 2-stroke petrol onto the rig with clothing attached to it, and then a lighter is ignited. So essentially pouring it over a rig, simulating a body of some kind of clothing, then coming up with a lighter to ignite it. Series E was testing different volumes with 2-stroke petrol in a cut open 2-litre container, which is then ignited, then the container is thrown at the test rig. So essentially you've got petrol in the container, you then get a lighter, ignite the petrol, and then throw it at the rig. What would that look like? And then Series F, test different volumes of 2-stroke petrol in the cut open container being brought close to a lit candle. So essentially, if I'm holding a lit candle, can I hold an open container containing 2-stroke petrol? And if I do, will it ignite? And how close do they have to come before ignition occurs? That was one of the tests. So essentially, we're trying to rule out or rule in, or is it possible that the deceased was holding the candle and the petrol container? That was the aim of those tests. So essentially, we needed a lot of plastic bottles, 2-litre solo container size bottles. We purchased 97 soy candles, and then we used 95 litres of 91 octane, and we had 3 litres of the semi-synthetic 2-stroke petrol, which was the picture there. So that was the equipment used, and then off to Londonderry we go. Now, we built this rig, or in fact, Timmy Garrett, our canine handler, built that rig, and essentially the deceased was 182 centimetres tall, at the same height as me, so I was just holding it vertical, and that's the height we chose. The candle was placed in this little rig and then was put in that position, and then essentially we were throwing the petrol at this rig numerous times. Now, like anything with this, we decided we better do a little pre-testing because sometimes you just got to burn to learn, as we say. So I was just outside the day before. I thought I'd throw it at it to see what would happen. No real PPE, but essentially, look at this thing of beauty. Oh, look at that. That's magnificent. Now you can just see how petrol works. Petrol, the liquid vaporizes through the air because the atoms or the liquids are separating. The separation of the liquid, atomization of the liquid essentially, creates a greater surface area of the droplet. That surface area then is producing more vapors, and ignition of those vapors occur. And you can see there that although the candle initially ignites, but as the liquid goes through the candle, hits the ground, the fire of the vapors is falling towards the ground and certainly ignited those more of the liquid vapors on the ground. Nice and beautiful in slow motion. And then I decided I'll do a second one. And I used a lot of liquid this time, and actually it extinguished the candle. So I was a little bit surprised with that, but I could see when I looked back at the video that the liquid was quite, together and hadn't really atomized into many droplets. So essentially, the liquid smothered the flame and extinguished it without ignition. So I was thinking to myself at this point, we may actually get a few that actually self-extinguish. So that was going to be interesting to see where my opinion would come out as well. But anyway, that was the pre-test. So we then moved into the first demonstration. Test number 1. Now you can see I've got my PPE on, just the jacket, thinking, not going to be too bad. We've got the rig set up. We've got distances, 0.5 metre, 1 metre, 1.5 and 2 metres on the ground. So at the throw point, it's about 0.5 metre. Wasn't quite prepared for such a big fire.
Mick, just letting you know, we can't hear the audio on the video.
Damn. How can that work? Okay, I'll just explain it. So that was test 1. Essentially, what I'm saying there is, and you can see slow motion here, ignition of the okay, that's not working there either. Ignition of the candle, and I was a bit surprised by it actually. Firstly, the fire, but certainly, secondly, the ignition of the container, and I wasn't prepared for that. So it was interesting to see the size of the fire, but ignition was quite easy. And we'll see another one slow motion in a second to be able to see what we can hear. Now, do you know anything about that, Angus, whether or not we can get the sound through?
Yeah, we can. If you stop sharing your screen for a second and then go to share it again, there'll be a little tick box that says share your computer audio.
Okay. Share. Oh, include sound. There you go. Let's try that again. Let's see if...
Okay, so we are Series A, Test 1. This is a...
We sure can.
Beautiful. Okay, so let's go to
test 4, Series A. So we've got 50-to-1 ratio petrol. We've got a quarter full, but now we're stepping back 1 metre distance, throwing it.
So you can see this time I'm a little bit better prepared. I've got my pants on. I'm actually putting my mask on. This time I'm a little bit better prepared.
Okay, so ignition, but the container has not ignited. So we've got ignition through the candle. That completes test number 4.
For some reason, the slow-mo is not working. Oh, got that.
Okay, test 4, Series A.
Container, test number 4.
Oh, no, it's not going to do it. Okay, that's all right. So I guess the big one from that one, if anyone looked, is the container did not ignite. Now, this is something I sort of discovered as I went through it. Now, if you remember the container from the crime scene, do you think that was burnt or not burnt? Like, in my opinion, it was not burnt. So straight away, at 0.5 of a metre, the container ignites. At 1 metre, the container does not ignite, except once at the 1 metre mark.
Okay, test 7, Series A. We've got 50-to-1 ratio 2-stroke. We've got a quarter full container, and now we're back to 1.5 metres in distance.
So now I'm at distance, and now it's really important that I shoot it straight, because there was a few times where if I missed it left or right, the fire didn't occur. You've got to be dead on.
Okay, so see there that ignition occurred around the candle, but the petrol thrown did not ignite as it fell to the ground. The container didn't catch light. As you can see, that petrol that has fallen on there. From my standing, I could see that the petrol actually split up mid-air and has gone to one side. So it wasn't directly over it. So that may be why ignition hasn't occurred. But as you can see, it wasn't fully ignited. That concludes test number 7.
So again, it was ignited around the candle, but there was not enough flaming to fall to the ground to ignite the petrol on the ground. So it was, again, the liquid amount has to be enough, and it has to sort of ignite through the candle for ignition to occur back all the way onto the ground.
Okay, so we're at test 10, Schedule A. We've got 50-to-1 ratio 2-stroke with a quarter full container, and now we're going from 2 metres.
I'll get to you a second, Peter. Just stand by.
Okay, we've got ignition. That throw, I was able to throw it at a good distance, and I could see the liquid went directly over the top of the flame. Hence why I see ignition there. So the throw was good enough to ignite it, and I didn't miss the flame. And the water, the liquid, stuck together, I could see in mid-air. That concludes test 10.
Yes, Peter, question. How are you? Peter Seebacker, you're on mute. Okay, nothing heard. Maybe put your question into the chat, Peter, and I'll answer it there. Oh, is he there? No, he's gone. So, yeah, you can see that you had to be dead on to get it, and you can see the fire. Now, look at the fire as well. That's 400 mils. So the fire is obviously with petrol. It's quite huge to start with, but then it dies down quite quickly. And then it doesn't, if you've got no combustible materials nearby, petrol will just, burn itself out. But if you have got combustible material nearby, it will ignite that, and then they start to burn. And this is the difference between the burning in the office and the burning in the lounge room. The lounge room had more combustible materials, which created a bigger fire. Moving on to the next one.
Sorry, I'm back, Mick.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
61 Series A.
Yes, Peter.
I took a photograph of you throwing the liquid just as you threw it while it was on the screen there. And what I noticed was it isn't actually an homogeneous field. You actually got striations. You've got solids and you've got gaps in between. So there's gradients and multiple ones. There's maybe 10 streams that impact the actual region of the candle. Did you take that into account?
Well, they're big words you're using there, Peter, so I don't know quite the meaning of all that. All I can say is that when you do slow it down, I've got some slow-mo coming up, you see that the liquid essentially travels through the candle. Now, the ignition occurs above the liquid because as the liquid is traveling, it's going down through gravity, but the vapor is above the liquid. So you'll see in slow motion that ignition occurs as it goes through it, but then the flames will then be created above the liquid as it hits the ground. Does that answer your question? I can't.
It does. I'll send you the photograph later on.
Yeah. And I've got some still photos later, obviously at the front of the presentation, like when it actually sort of creates, hits the ground. But yeah, it was fascinating to watch in slow-mo, just the ignition sequence of the liquid as it passes through the air. But yes, thank you. Let's go with this one.
The 61 Series A, got 25 to 1. We've got 3/4 of 1.2 litres and throwing it from 0.5.
So now we've got a lot of petrol from the short distance. Have a look at the size of the fire at this one. A lot of liquid. Now this is the slow-mo. Now see how the vapours are being ignited above the liquid. Now look at the size of the fire.
And the container.
A little finado, look at that.
Loaded a lot of big fire into the large amount of liquid. That completes test 61.
And again, the size, a lot of smoke as well. So certainly for me, 1.2 litres is way too much. I don't think there was 1.2 litres in that scene.
Test 53, 25 to 1 ratio, 2-stroke petrol. With half a container, 800 mil from 1 metre.
Okay. So what happened there was the liquid was quite
Thick over a flat sort of area, and it's extinguished the candle. So, and I've still got a bit of liquid in here. So that concludes test 53.
So over the 2 days, we conducted 57 tests in this series, Series A. Only once did it extinguish. So again, it had to be quite unique. The liquid stuck together almost like a blanket, went through so the flame couldn't penetrate through the top of the liquid to ignite the vapors on top of the liquid. The liquid then actually extinguished the flame. So that only happened once.
Okay, we're at Series F now. Test 145. This test is using the 25:1 ratio 2-stroke petrol in a container. The container's a quarter full. And the test is the candle's lit. How far or how close does the container have to get to the lit candle for it to ignite, if it ignites at all? Test 145.
So we've moved to Series F. Now we're looking to see, could the deceased hold both the candle and the fuel? How close do they have to be?
As I get closer, the thing is that the vapors of the ignitable liquid are heavier than air. So they're all hanging out down the bottom here. So now if I was to pour it a little bit without pouring it in, it may ignite. Here we go. Okay.
So I hope you all sort of understood that. Essentially, when you've got a low amount of liquid in a container, ignitable liquid, the vapors are just above it. So if you bring in the container towards an ignition source, you will not get ignition because the vapors need to be ignited down here. Now, as you put more liquid in, it's going to be easier to ignite with the ignition or ignition source closer to the top, which you'll see next. So this is 800 mils.
So around the edges of the container, oh, yep, it did ignite. So 400 mil, 800 mil had a higher height, and therefore vapors were closer to the top of the container. So bringing them close to the flame ignited those vapors. That concludes.
So that's now 800, and it was a lot easier to ignite than 400. And now 1200. Next to the candle. Very easy, because the vapors are at the top.
Yeah.
So that was the difference. Yes, someone could hold both of them, but if the liquid is lower in that container that was found in the at the scene, you essentially have to sort of pour the vapors into the candle for ignition to occur. Highly unlikely, and in my opinion, that did not occur at the scene.
25 mils of melted wax into 400 mils of fuel that does not ignite. So that concludes.
So we moved on to Series C. This was now melted wax. Because we found a whole bunch of melted wax around the scene, was it possible that the wax that was thrown at some point ignite the petrol? As you can see there, melted wax melted around 70 degrees. Pouring that into the vapors of the liquid does not ignite it. So that one was ruled out.
Okay, test 127, Series E. We are now testing igniting 25:1 ratio 2-stroke in the container, 1/4 full. I'm going to ignite the container And I'm going to stand at a 4 metre mark and throw the lit container liquid forward to see how far it will go. 1, 2, 7.
So now we know that this did not occur at the scene, but this is just to prove it. If you had the petrol in the can, in the container, you ignite it and then you throw it. But look at the container. It's already ignited. And now look at the container. The container's burning. That was not found at the crime scene.
Okay, so as soon as I lit the container, the mouth of the container contracted. So it was a smaller hole for the liquid to come out. But as the liquid came, you could see it travelled the whole distance, quite a high flame height. And you can see the container is still sort of burning, such as that. That completes test 1, 2, 7.
So that did not occur. Now we're doing with 800 mil. And again, I'm a bit hesitant here, but you can see, look at the size of the fire. Now I'm trying to compare the size of the fire to the size of the fire at the crime scene.
So ignition, a good line. Same thing, the bottle contracted at the top of the opening. That will throw the liquid. Yeah, nice. Good burn. Back to finish.
So again, I think that 800 mils is probably too much ignitable liquid for that fire scene. Throughout the day, on the first day and the second day, we had QPOL representatives as well as was talking to the DPP at the time, and they decided that Series B and Series D would not be required. Essentially, pouring petrol over oneself while holding a candle would create ignition, in my opinion, because essentially the liquid is bouncing off your head. It's now atomizing as it goes all over your body, certainly creating more vapors. Would come close to that, holding a lit candle, ignition would occur, not a problem, in my opinion. And then pouring petrol over a test rig, so essentially pouring petrol over someone, like a dummy or whatever, and then coming along with a lighter, yes, we know ignition will occur, and that would ignite all the clothing. So those two series were removed from the testing schedule. Look, we had a FLIR camera just to show you the different heights. You can see the different colours, and the different it represents the different heat. So I just thought I'd throw that in there because you can see the temperature is pretty spectacular. You see at the start of the liquid was very, blue. You got the temperature scale on the right there, but the FLIR was used a couple of times just to have a look, which was a bit of fun. Now, when we look at all the tests, originally we wanted to do 3 tests of each, but again, this is going to take a long time. So then a lot of it was taken out. So Series A, as you can see there, from 0.51 and 1.5 and then 2. Towards the end, we didn't do many of the 1.2 litres. It was a lot of fuel. The risk with a lot of fuel was higher for injury, and just, it's going to doesn't really need to be done. So we cancelled a lot of those tests. But you can see that a lot of tests were done at the 0.51 and 1.5 sort of distances. Obviously, Series B was removed. Series C, we melted wax. We didn't need to do that 3 times. We just knew the theory, the science behind it, that it wasn't going to work. And then we had Series D, that was removed. Series E, the 2-stroke petrol thrown in a container, then thrown again. We only did 2 tests there, 400 and 800. 1200 wasn't required. And then the 2-stroke brought to the container, brought close to the container. We only did those tests once, which was 400, 800, and 1200. And you can see ignition occurs, but under certain circumstances with that. So the results, throwing from Series A, my results were that there was throwing a 2-litre 2-stroke petrol at a lit candle does ignite the vapors. Only one test, that was test 53, did the liquid actually extinguish it. Ignition of the vapors of the falling liquid as it passed through the candles occurred 36 of the 49 times. The container was ignited 14 times. 13 of these was 0.5 distance. So that was significant for me, which was every test conducted at the 0.5. Only one test at 1 metre or greater than 0.5 metre ignited. So, for my opinion, that was really critical, or really important, that you had to have been further than 0.5 of a metre away for the container not to ignite, because that's what we found at the crime scene. The crime scene, in my opinion, the container was heat affected. I don't think ignition occurred. I don't think there was a fire there, even though there was some soot. Because if a fire had occurred, now they swabbed the inside of the container to get petrol. If a fire did occur, then there would be nothing left of the container. The container would have continued to burn to absolutely nothing and just a crumpled plastic bit of blob. These were the results, as you can see, tests 1, 2, and 3 at the top. You can see that the container, again, next to test 2, there's absolutely nothing left of it. And then at the end, you can see all of the candles that were used at the time, what they look like. Series C, the results essentially: melted wax does not ignite two-stroke petrol. Series E, ignited two-stroke petrol in a plastic container and thrown, could cover over 4 metres. Thrown liquid would have its vapours ignited by the dispersion of the liquid in the air over that distance when the liquid is thrown. And Series F, vapours of a two-stroke inside a cut open 2-litre solo bottle could be ignited by a candle flame held close to the container opening, especially when the container has more volume of liquid in it. The less liquid in the container would require one to tilt the container so that the heavier than air vapours could pour into the candle container, which would ignite those vapours. And that was the results. Essentially, there was no significant difference between the burning of characteristics or the size of the fire between the 25-1 and the 50-1. So essentially, we started at 50-1, we went to 25-1. There was no difference, so we did stick with the 25-1. Since there was more oil in the 25-1, it did produce more smoke, or darker smoke, which is that oil burning. And essentially, the size of the fire is dependent on the volume of the liquid used. The greater the volume of liquid, the greater the fire. So now it's essentially coming up with an opinion as to how much liquid was actually used, which is what I came up to here. So essentially, for me, the opinion, and I've got to learn how to spell opinion there, it would be probable that if a two-stroke petrol was thrown at a lit candle, then ignition of the vapours produced from that liquid would occur. From the demonstrations conducted, it is also probable that for a plastic 2-litre solo container not to be consumed by the fire, a lit candle would have to be more than 0.5 metres from where the petrol was thrown. The demonstration also showed that the thrown liquid and subsequent vapours would have to be introduced to the candle flame directly for ignition to occur. If the liquid misses the flame on either side, then it's possible ignition would not occur. It's my opinion the volume of the two-stroke would not be greater than 400 mils. From the demonstration that I observed, it's probable that the volume of two-stroke greater than 400 mil will result in a fire that would have caused a greater fire damage than I observed in the fire crime scene. Now, this is essentially police, DPP, they all want to know how long a fire's been burning, how much liquid was used. Putting a number to it is created with a lot of danger, and I was certainly grilled on the stand about this amount, no more than 400 mils, but I'll get to that in a second. The damage to the structure and the furniture that I observed from the crime scene photos was not significant. The greatest area of burning between the lounge chair and the near wall was due to the fire that had occurred as a result of combustible materials located here. It wasn't the ignitable liquid. Certainly the ignitable liquid initiated ignition, but the size of the fire was that. These combustible materials would have been ignited by the burning of the ignitable liquid thrown to this location. The area of burning on the timber floor and storage area along the wall was not significant. Burning from the thrown two-stroke petrol occurred here, but then self-extinguished due to the fuel being consumed and the lack of other combustible materials in this location. So then that was essentially what I wrote. So off to court I go in April 2024. I essentially spent one day with the prosecutor, which was a Sunday, the Crown prosecutor. Now, she was really, really good. She wanted to know all about fire. And so when I gave her my statements, we sat down and went through it, and it was very beneficial. And this is one of my certainly lessons that I learned. You've got to teach the DPP about fire so they better understand it, so they can better prosecute it and advocate around the fire science of your opinion. So I spent 3 days on the stand, long 3 days, which was a bit of fun. Now, what I said initially in my statement is that the burning of these areas here, certainly here, along here, and areas along there, area in the back of there, was consistent with the burning of an ignitable liquid. When I got into court, though, and this is all these areas here, so down under here, all these wispy soot. And you all know, if you've been investigating fires, you go to an ignitable liquid burn, you've seen this before. It could be nothing else other than the burning of an ignitable liquid that has landed there. And that's what I said in court. I said, this is uniquely consistent. And they said, what do you mean by uniquely consistent? And I said, well, it couldn't be anything else. Well, what about this? No. What about that? No. So I was pretty strong on that, and I know. And the problem, and we'll go to in the defence in a second, is that samples were not taken in this area. So it could not be confirmed by the lab. And again, the burning here, the burning under this V pattern, the burning around this corner, this is uniquely consistent with the burning of ignitable liquid. And I was criticised for saying that. I gave my testimony. We didn't know what was going to happen with the defendant. They were obviously given time to work out whether they were going to produce an expert or not. Initially, I was told, no, there's no expert. And they went, okay. So then he gets up on the stand. I went home. He gets up on the stand the week after me. And then he decides to provide a version of events. And this is it. He said that they were in the office discussing the rent. The deceased was standing and picked up something from the desk area. He produced a plastic soft drink container, moving it from right hand to his left. He came from behind the desk, picking up the candle. The deceased moved towards the defendant, who tried to slap down the container. The deceased jumped and turned to his right, and there was an explosion of fire. The defendant tried to hit the container out of his hands. The fire was about 1.5 metres in height. The defendant then ran out of the house. So that's his version. He tried to slap it out of his hands, and he was holding it as well. And this is his version of events. So as part of they decided then, after they had a break, that they would engage a defence expert. So he was provided my statement and obviously my courtroom testimony, and he comes back with essentially this. So the ignitable liquid patterns at the bookcase, whilst they were consistent with the burning of ignitable, they were not uniquely consistent. So I've got no idea what that means. What's the difference in that sense? And then he says this is because they need to be tested by a lab, and therefore NFPA 921 states that this is an invalid hypothesis. The inverted V at the nib wall agreed with Forbes that it can be caused by the burning of an ionic liquid. It also can be generated by the burning of other materials, such as polyurethane foam, loose papers, or fabric. So essentially what he's saying is this area here is burning, it is possible, but it's not. So essentially it says that 91 directs that any hypothesis concerning the presence or otherwise of ignitable liquid needs to be tested by chemical analysis. As no evidence of ignitable liquid was found in the samples recovered by this area, the hypothesis of Fire Officer Forbes that ignitable liquid had burned in this area was not supported. Now, my argument was that there was ignitable liquid found at the scene and in the office. It's just that it wasn't sampled in these areas. And I was very strong that it was uniquely consistent. All this area down here that was uniquely consistent with the burning of an ignitable liquid. The combustion of the plastic bottle, the rim of the bottle had melted, but a fire is burning above the rim of the bottle. Now, this is where it gets a bit crazy. He says that you've got the bottle, you've got the liquid in the bottle, it's burning, but it's burning above because that's where it's now, the mixture is right. So it's lean, it's within the flammable range. And I said, no. And if you see the video, I'll show you in the video sec, have a look at when I ignite the liquid inside. The flames actually inside the container. It doesn't burn above the liquid, okay, not above the container. So if ignition had occurred in that container, it would have melted and burnt all the way in. He's saying, no, it only burnt above it, and therefore it melted the top part. I disagreed with him. So his conclusions, methodology used by FORBES was not consistent with NSP 921, the scientific method. Testing was subject to confirmation bias, mainly a failure to provide an alternative hypothesis. Well, again, I wasn't given the defence's scenario, so how could I actually test that hypothesis if I wasn't given it? The test supporting the prosecution, the testing supports both the prosecution and the defence case. The patents in the office were created by ignitable liquid, but only one sample was confirmed by the lab. The patent at the nib wall was not created by ignitable liquid. I strongly disagree with that. Burning of the bottle rim occurred while there was still ignitable liquid in the bottle. Now, if that had occurred, it would have burnt into the bottle and destroyed the bottle. So I disagreed with that one as well. So he spent, I think, 2 days on the stand, and we did our best to discredit him. But that was that. And then I must also tell you that this was a judge-only trial, which was good in the sense that this type of evidence was actually allowed. And that's the first time in a Supreme Court in Australia that this fire demonstrations was actually allowed into it. So that's my whole goal, was to get this. But my intention was to obviously get an opinion from a judge about whether we did it good, whether we did it bad. Now, obviously, guilty, not guilty, I mean, that's for the courts, that's for police. I wasn't too fussed about that. What I wanted to know is, what did the judge think of the demonstrations we did? Did it help him? Did it assist the court? Or was it robust? Or was it bad? And that's essentially what I was waiting on. So we then get the judgment in June. And so the Honourable Justice Kimber provided. The trial started in April 2024 and completed in March 2025. His judgment was on the 17th of June, as you can see there, and he was found guilty of murder. Now, obviously, that's a win for the prosecution, and that's great, not a problem, but I still wanted to know the judgment. It's 153 pages, so off I was trying to find the expert opinion area. So then he was sentenced to a minimum of 24 years. Now, he is appealing this, and the appeal is on actually at the moment. The DPP are dealing with that down in South Australia at the moment. So I go through the judgment, and here I'm sitting there going, right, please, come on, what do you got? What do you got for me? Is this going to be good, or is this going to be bad? Because essentially we want to learn from this as well. We want to know, are we doing it well? Can we do it better? And, you know, do we have to do things quite differently? So, firstly, he comes up, Mr. Forbes and Mr. Cox, this is the defence expert, were impressive witnesses. I'm like, tick, this is good. He was not able to prefer the experience and expertise of one over the other. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I get that. Second part, Mr. Forbes did not have any confirmation bias. He was not given a defence scenario to test. Forbes considered other hypotheses involving petrol and ignition source held by one person. Forbes also answered questions put to him by the defence, asking to assume facts. He did not dismiss the defence scenarios as not possible. So for me, I'm going, tick, this is good. I'm looking good. Then we get over to the next page. I find that the expert evidence does not ultimately assist me in determining what happened in the office. No. And then I'm unable to find that one scenario is any more likely than the other. And I'm in tears. Somewhat tears, but I'm just like, ugh. So I find that nothing material can be safely drawn from the damage to the solo bottle. On the evidence, the damage to the solo bottle can accommodate both scenarios. In my view, the smoke patterns, damage to the solo bottle, and the other aspects of the scene can accommodate both the prosecution case and the defence case. In the circumstances, I find that the expert evidence neither undermines the evidence of the defendant nor the prosecution case. I find that the expert evidence does not weigh any more in favour of one case than the other. So I was a little bit disappointed with that. And essentially, when you read the judgment, a lot of it came down to the witnesses that were in there inside the house and their credibility and whether he believed what happened. And essentially, I guess that's what has happened. He sort of believed what they saw, and that's why he's gone with the guilty verdict. So lessons learned. Was it worth it? Well, for me, yes, I believe it was worth it. It is something that you should try and do if you can. Sometimes we do get these cases that police come to you and say, I've got this case now, can you give me an opinion? Now, you could certainly do that via literature. You can look at books and try and give your opinion there. But I do find that if you conduct these type of demonstrations, you will learn some things. For me, it was the container. You know, if you get too close to the flame, throwing petrol, certainly it will not. And that didn't happen. And I did not know that going into the demonstration burns. So that was really good. I think it was worth it, even though I was disappointed that I did not, or the judge essentially couldn't move one way or the other. I really think you have to work with the prosecution. You've got to teach them about fire. It will pay off. This lady, her name was Lisa Dunlop. She was the best prosecutor I've ever worked with over my career. Most prosecutors don't really give two hoots about fire. They just say, it's a fire. That's a fire. It doesn't really matter. It's a fire. I think they need to understand a little bit about it so that they can best advocate for the prosecution's case if there is, the fire is a big part of the incident. And again, this area of getting demonstrations, a schedule approved by the DPP before you start. That's what I learned from Women on Fire. I was able to sort of go, well, I'm not going to do that again. I want to get the DPP involved from the start. They approve it. They're the ones that've got to get it through the system and get it before the court, whether it's a jury or judge alone. And in this case, it's the first time that was done. And in the end, it didn't assist, but I still think it is worth it. And essentially, you've got to burn to learn. And again, each time I do these type of demonstrations, I've done quite a few of these now. You do learn every time that you're burning something, even though it might be small. You sort of go, okay, because fire is so unpredictable, it is really difficult to know what is going to happen. So that's why demonstrations are important, and that's why if you can do them, I encourage you to certainly do them. And you've got to burn to learn, baby. You've got to burn to learn. Just showing you some photos of the setup here. We certainly used the Londonderry site. Why are these photos not coming up? Let me just get out of that. Why is that not coming up? Let's try again. There we go. So this is the setup we had with these containers. A lot of the candles set up there. And inside the container, we were able to set up, which is the luxury of being undercover and all that type of stuff. And you can see there we had, tents set up, marquees to protect us long days out there. Certainly, you can see they had the police crime scene taking videos at the time and recording. We also had a fire investigator from Metropolitan Fire Service come up. That was Michael Whitford. He was actually attended the scene as well with Michael Pickford, who's the crime scene officer just on the right as well. So that's him there. This one here, that's Michael. So he attended the crime scene and he was there with him assisting. So that worked out well. There's all the candles and there's the team sort of working hard in the background. And this is a nice little photo of us at the end once we had done. So it worked out really well. So a good fun day, 2 days of testing. Just what's next for me? Certainly One of my last demonstrations or jobs I've got on is the Ghost Train fire. We're still waiting. It's still with the coroner. I want to do a case study about that, certainly when I'm allowed to speak to it, but at the moment I'm not. So I'll have to sort of wait until that. So that was on Netflix, but for some reason it's been taken off Netflix, so you can still see it on iView. So look for Exposed if you want to watch it. Very entertaining, no evidence whatsoever, but that's essentially about it. And that's certainly like a poor, you can see what the flame sort of produced at the end. But I don't know, some people can see a unicorn in there, some people see a mushroom, but I'll leave that interpretation over to you. Open to any questions. I've gone over a bit of time, but any questions from the floor?
Ken's got a question. We'll let Ken go first.
Up. You're on mute.
Two questions. The first one is, do you think using the phrase uniquely was, or would you be better have just said it was consistent with a flammable liquid?
I chose that word knowing, well, the reason I chose that word was first a guy in the US told me to do it. Well, told me about it initially. But I chose it because I knew it could not have been anything else other than ignitable liquid. That's why I chose uniquely consistent. Certainly you see those type of those type of fire patterns at scenes, and you will say, you walk in, oh, that's consistent with burning of ignitable. Yes, I need to get a sample. Yes, I need to confirm that it is there, and then I can say, yes, that is ignitable liquid. But because I already had one sample positive on the desk, like, it had to have been other. We worked out that it was like there must have been an arc of throw, and this was in the court as well. So, like, it wasn't a straight throw. You could see, because if you're standing in that area, you've got the desk, you've got the cupboards behind, and then you've got the nib wall. So there's certainly an arc of throw. So he must have done sort of that. But when that is occurring and you've got ignitable liquid there, and then you've got the wispy soot all over the place, it has to have been uniquely consistent with the burning of ignitable. That's why I chose that word.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm just saying is uniquely a good phrase to use. The second comment I've got is, and this is not a criticism, it's just a comment, but in future, do you think they'll do a few more samples at scenes?
Well, and that's what, again, in my experience, as a fire investigator, we're working with crime scene officers all the time. The crime scene officers come with different varies of experience, and sometimes we have to guide them on what to take, what samples to take. Again, we would be guiding them because we've got a canine handler as well. We're very lucky in that sense, but we would be guiding them to take as many samples as possible. Now, whether or not the police actually send all those samples to the lab to be analysed, that's their decision. But I certainly would encourage, when you're seeing these type of fire patterns, to get as many samples as you can get, because, again, as indicated in this type of case, that it was a problem down the line in court, trying to say, yes, it was ignitable liquid. No, the lab didn't say that. There's no samples. And then there may have been an error in the sampling at the nib, and that's why it's come back negative. So, you know, having that backup would have assisted. But, yeah, more samples would have been good.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, if you had more samples, you could have maybe mapped, like an arc map of flammable liquid spread.
Yeah, sure.
Cheers, mate.
No worries.
I've got a question for you, Mick. Oh, sure. Actually, we'll let Paul pull out his hand.
Paul always has a question.
Sorry, Mick. Absolutely fabulous, spectacular presentation.
Well, stop it. You always say that.
I'll throw you $5 later. Now, given that you've done Women on Fire, this one, and your Luna Park one, would you change things in future activities, experiments that you do, or any future ones you do, from your learning? previous.
Yeah, and as I said, I've learned obviously to get the DPP involved. And what I've learned is certainly you don't know. You can have it on paper. I'm going to throw petrol at a candle. That's going to ignite it. And happy days. I'll do that 10 times. You don't know until you actually do it what's going to happen. And then when you're doing it, you got to adapt. And I found that on Women on Fire as well, fire created from water. You need to adapt on the day because you'll think, hang on, that didn't quite work. So that means that we're going to have to do this separately or to create a new test schedule to actually be able to say, right, we need to change this a little bit to adapt to what is happening. So, yes, I've learned a lot, but, yeah, always learning.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
Forbesy, I probably would have used the word distinctly instead of uniquely.
Say that again?
I would have used the word distinct instead of unique.
It's distinctly unique. Sorry, distinctly consistent. Is that what you mean? Distinctly.
Yeah, that probably would have been a better word, only because unique is a one-off. So it's not a one-off. It's reoccurring. Yeah, so that's probably why they were picking on you on that.
For sure. And listen, I left myself open, but I was supremely confident that it was ignitable liquid. And that's why
there's no doubt it was ignitable liquid. And I don't actually believe that you need to take more samples. It's distinctly a burn pattern created by ignitable liquids. And I would have.
It left me open. It left me open to criticism, and that's fine. And that's all part of the game. You know, everyone is open to scrutiny, and I was certainly scrutinised a lot for a day and a half. So, and that was certainly one part of it. I would still use that word.
Yeah. The one other thing, would you change anything about your experiment? Because I'd probably change one thing about it.
Listen, certainly the measurements of the distances, I was all over the shop there. No, what would you change?
I put a matic in there because the petrol's going to bounce off the guy's chest.
Yeah, so certainly that was suggested at the start, but then we'd have to get multiple mannequins. And the thing is, once the mannequin ignites, and we did this with Woman on Fire, it sort of burns as well, and obviously it creates its own fuel. So it's not really, it's very difficult because it's not quite exactly the same as a sort of a person burning as well. So yes, maybe like a steel sort of probably would be better because it would bounce off and not actually burn.
But if you see like the actual photo you've got up, it's all over the floor, but you didn't have those burn patterns like in the scene. And I reckon those burn patterns on the shelf is because it bounced off the guy and then flung over and created smaller pools rather than one giant pool.
Yeah. Listen, and this is the reason why I call it demonstration. There's no way we could have recreated that. It was a very difficult scene because there was so much going on. So, listen, it could probably be different. And this is where you're going to need to get multiple heads together in a room to discuss it. And then as we're doing the demonstrations, again, we all come together discussing this works, this doesn't work, things like that.
Yeah, I think we've got Peter again.
Peter!
He's at the top of the list.
Hi. When you showed a picture earlier on, it was a region next to I think you called it the nib or something. Then you said there was some organic material that was burnt. There's only about 30 megajoules or less in the fuel. It's very small, got a very small energy content. It's equivalent to about a kilo of, polyurethane or something. Do those sorts of arguments come into sort of court cases where you can obviously, as a scientist, just look at this and just say the heat flux and heat intensity is going to indicate the distinction between polyurethane and the fuel and so on, or is that beyond them?
No. The expert for the defence was certainly a person that used a lot of formulas, but it was to the point where our argument was that he lived in a theoretical world and I live in a practical world. He wanted to put every fire scenario into a formula of some kind. And that's where we were quite frustrated, both the prosecutor and myself, listening to his testimony because he was trying to formulate everything. And then if that certain scenario couldn't be put into a formula, he was essentially opining that, that couldn't happen. because you can't put it in the formula. I'm like, well, hang on. It did happen. You can see it. And that's the difference between me conducting demonstrations and he's just providing an opinion based on my statement, I guess.
I think we got Jim Monday up next.
G'day, Jim. You're on mute there, buddy.
You're on mute, Jim.
Still on mute.
There we go. How's that?
There we go.
Yeah,
that's better.
One day I'll learn to drive this technology. Just going back to the semantics for a moment. By the way, I thought the whole thing was fantastic. Brilliant stuff. Not experiments, demonstration. Yeah, okay. To me, homicide is their experiment. Sorry?
I'm just glad you weren't on the defence this time.
Well, I don't do things all by formulas anyway, so there we go. So just one thing on the semantics. I don't know if you're aware, but there's a published sliding scale of expressions for use in forensic science, and what are recommended for certain levels of likelihood. And consistent is actually regarded as fairly weak. So if you use uniquely and consistent, it's almost like you're opposing things. You've got one where you say it's unique. There's only one of it, but consistent. I was always, when I've talked to barristers, I always say, well, consistent, yeah, it's consistent with this, it's consistent with that, it's consistent with something else, So I tend to use phrases. I do use consistent, but not when I'm rock solid on something. If I'm rock solid on something, I'll usually use words like match, or I use indicate a lot. I use indicative, but I do use match or words to that effect.
Okay. No,
but it's just a semantic thing. But I'll talk to you offline about it.
That's interesting. I'm always I love doing the wordsmith. I think words matter. You have to be specific about what you're saying. So trying to get the right word is difficult. It takes a lot of skill. But always looking for new words.
Yeah.
Now, I've also received some feedback from a crime scene friend, and she was saying that I'm glad I didn't bag crime scene. I'm not bagging crime scene, but yes, certainly samples. More samples should be taken sometimes because it may assist people going to court. But yes, thanks for the feedback. Any other questions?
Shane's got a question.
Michael, when you did these tests, was it in winter? Did you actually measure the temperature of the fuel at the time of doing it?
Yeah, so we did work out the temperature, and obviously we worked out that in the morning when we did on day one, the temperatures were similar, but certainly the temperature increased as the day went on. And yes, it does affect the petrol because it's off-gassing more at a higher temperature. Certainly this happened at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, so it was quite cool inside a house. But again, that's something you can't control, or it's very difficult to control. So trying to, again, replicate, you're not doing that. You're just demonstrating what's possible and what's not possible. And that's where the word demonstration will assist. Well, I've gone over my time by a long way, and I can see a few people have dropped off. Wow, Ken, one more.
Yeah, just a reminder to everybody, if you look in the chat, the link to the AAFI 2026 conference is there. The website registration should be live. The draft program is purely a draft and is subject to amendment and changes, but that is available, and I'll be sending an email to the presidents in the next 24, 36 hours so you can pass it on to all the members, but that's there now if people want to look at it. Thank you very much.
Good timing there, Ken. I forgot to mention that at the start as well. But yeah, certainly everyone, the AAFI, the Australasian Association of Fire Investigators Conference, biannual conference, will be held in Christchurch this year in October. Please try if you can make it over to the ditch. That'd be great. So NZAFI, get your support. It's going to be a great conference. Get on down to NZ.
Well, thanks, guys. I was going to close with that. But anyway, already done.
There you go. Lucky.
So, thanks. I was actually going to open it to Ken to say something too, and he already has. So excellent. All right. So that comes to the conclusion of the presentation. Thank you, Michael, for that. That was very interesting. Yeah, it was really good. So thank you, everyone, for coming to the presentation tonight. Hopefully, we'll see you in the next one in 2 months, and that'll be advertised. And yeah, look out for the 40-hour course if you're interested. And also the conference at the end of the year. There's also the IAAI conference, and there's also the one being held in Helsinki, the European one, if anyone's interested.
Yeah, that looks good.